Evergrande has been on the news lately, and I'm seeing headlines about them defaulting on payments, people possibly losing their house, and that there could be a next financial crisis. So in this video, I want to look at Evergrande in detail and give you my opinion on the situation. Now, before I start, I just want to say that I really enjoyed researching on Evergrande. So I'm thinking to do an ongoing series where I look into troubled businesses, because I think that the best way to learn is through other people's mistakes. Anyway, with that said, let's check out Evergrande. Okay, so who is Evergrande? Well, Evergrande is a property developer in China, a very big one. They actually own theme parks, they have a soccer team, they make electric vehicles, and also provide healthcare services. Interestingly, I looked at the annual report in 2020, and what I found out was that even with all these extra businesses, 98% of their revenue is still from property sales. So what that tells me is this business is not very effective with their money. They've spent all this money on these extra businesses, and yet they heavily rely on property development. In their peak, the company was worth $54 billion in 2017, making them the largest property developer in China. So what went wrong? Well, since its peak, the stock price dropped 95%. Their company value went from 54 billion to 3 billion. They also have a lot of debt. They accumulated over $300 billion worth of liabilities. And finally, in December 2021, they defaulted on their interest payment of 80 million. To give you an idea of how dire that situation is, I need to give credit to Patrick Boyle. He compared Evergrande not making their $80 million worth of interest to an American family with a $53,000 loan not being able to scrape $15 for the next payment. Okay, so how did they get here? Well, to give you some background, the property development industry is highly leveraged. You need to actually first borrow money in order to buy land and then to construct buildings. Even with that, Evergrande is the most in debt in this highly leveraged industry. They have $300 billion worth of liabilities versus $55 billion worth of equities. That means that they have 6 times more debt than money that they actually own. To make matters worse, they actually borrowed money from their employees' family and friends. And these people are finally realizing that they may actually lose everything. So you may be wondering, why is Evergrande borrowing so much money? There's only so many soccer teams you can buy. Well, essentially what they're doing is rolling over their debt. So they're borrowing money to pay off existing debt. To give you some context, it'll be like if I had a debt and instead of using cash to pay, I go and get another credit card to pay off this existing debt. It doesn't sound financially sound. Well, it isn't, and this company was doing it. Now, even with all these problems, Evergrande was hanging on, but that was until the Chinese introduced a new policy. So China was very worried about a new housing market bubble. So they introduced these policies to stop developers from overborrowing. Basically, it's 3 requirements that these developers needed to follow in order to continue borrowing money. And surprise, surprise, Evergrande did not comply with any of the requirements, and therefore they couldn't continue borrowing. And as I explained to you before, they were living off borrowed money, and now they couldn't borrow, they were stuck. Okay, so now that we know what Evergrande's about, we know their problem, and we know how they got to this problem, what's happening right now? Well, China is very worried about Evergrande's large debt. They're worried that if they do collapse, it's going to cause a rippling effect to the rest of China. This effect is called contagion. I'll give you some example of what this contagion could look like. If Evergrande doesn't pay back the money it owes to the people, these people may have their own loans, which they then can't pay back. So the snowball just keeps rolling down the hill, getting larger and larger. Another way could be if Evergrande decides to sell the properties for cheap to get quick cash. Now, what's that going to do? It's going to cause house prices to drop, and it could also crash the housing market. Now, China is very aware of this. So what they're doing is they're stepping in and making sure Evergrande restructures the debt and also pays their debt on time. Okay, so what's my opinion on all this? Well, I've been hearing that Evergrande could be like the collapse of Lehman Brothers that caused the 2009 financial crisis. However, if you look at the numbers, Lehman Brothers had $600 billion worth of liabilities compared to Evergrande, who only have $300 billion worth of liabilities. If you factor in inflation, Evergrande's debt is much less. So I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but it's less likely. The next thing is I've been hearing that the government should be bailing out Evergrande. Well, I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I do think that China is going to protect the citizens who have purchased homes and have yet to receive them. Because I think that these people are kind of innocent in this whole mess, and I think China is going to protect these people and also protect the housing market. However, the people that have actually purchased bonds or are shareholders of Evergrande, I think this debt restructuring that they're about to do, it's going to cause these people to lose a lot of money. Finally, my last opinion is on investing. When it comes to this Evergrande situation, I would say avoid investing in companies that are too indebted. And the reason is you could lose all your money. So what I like to do when I'm investing is look at companies through certain metrics like liabilities over equities and debt over cash. These metrics help to get you to avoid looking at companies that are too indebted and their financial situation is not sound. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.